You can learn more at themusicemporium.com and Rhodes Scholar, celebrating 50 years of transformative learning adventures for adults in over 100 countries. Learn more at rhodescholar.org/explore.
3 million documents, but not enough answers. Critics say the last installment from the DOJ's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein is still not enough.
We won't be satisfied until we get the names of Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators and the names of the men who were protected.
I'm Amory Sievertson, accountability in the Epstein investigation. That's on the next On Point.
$11 o'clock tomorrow morning for that new On Point. Florida Matters Live and Local is next on WUSF 89.7 Tampa. And you can call into Florida Matters Live and Local by calling 813-755-6562.
The Perlman Music Program Suncoast welcomes the Ariel String Quartet back to Sarasota. This program includes music from Beethoven as well as Haydn's The Joke Quartet. Sunday, February 22nd at Holly Hall. Tickets at pmpsuncoast.org.
On the Bay Blend podcast, we dive into some of the cool things that make the Tampa Bay area unique, like talking to 5 women who used to be mermaids back in the 60s at Weeki Wachee Springs, diving back into the springs again.
How hard is it to put on the tail?
I've got a messed up knee, got messed up stomach, got messed up arm. It's hard.
You'll get a bit of news, culture, and events every day on the Bay Blend from WUSF. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts or at WUSF.org.
The debate over property taxes in Florida rages on. People who want them eliminated or reduced say they're just too high. Others worry reducing property taxes could make it hard to pay for things like schools, roads, and public parks. A new study finds Tampa Bay counties could be among the hardest hit by the loss of property tax revenue. I'm Matthew Petty, and coming up on Florida Matters Live and Local, we hear from 2 people who are paying close attention to how taxes are collected and spent, and we want to hear from you. Would you welcome a property tax cut, or are you worried about services going away? Call 813-755-6562 or email floridamatters@wusf.org to join the conversation. Also this hour, Florida gets a poor grade for gun laws from a gun safety advocacy group. Find out why. And that rain yesterday was a welcome for tinder-dry Tampa Bay, but the drought and wildfire danger continues. Talk about all this, plus take your calls and emails after these headlines.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Nora Rahm. Lawmakers in the White House remain deadlocked over proposed changes to federal immigration enforcement. NPR's Sam Greenglass reports the Department of Homeland Security ran out of money on Friday, forcing it to partially shut down.
This latest standoff seems to follow a familiar cycle. A crisis captures national attention. A number of Democrats and Republicans pledged to take action, only for talks to fizzle and lawmakers to trade blame across the aisle. That's what happened after a bipartisan effort to resurrect lapsed health subsidies fell apart recently, says Senator Tim Kaine, a Virginia Democrat.
On health care, on immigration, the parties are in fundamentally very, very different places. And so that means I go into any negotiation in a topic like this, high hopes, low expectations.
Negotiations on immigration between Democrats and the White House are ongoing, but Congress is in recess until next week. Sam Greenglass, NPR News, Washington.
Ukrainian negotiators arrived in Geneva today for another round of negotiations on ending Russia's war, a week before the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion. Russia and the U.S. will also attend the talks, which begin tomorrow. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the U.S. is doing what it can to end the war.
The United States has been successful at being able to get both sides to talk. I mean, for the first time, I don't know, in a number of years, you actually have at a technical level military officials from both sides sat down last week in the Middle East, and we'll restart those talks again in Geneva later this week.
Rubio spoke in Budapest after meeting with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Also in Geneva tomorrow, another round of talks begin between the U.S. and Iran on Iran's nuclear program. The two sides had met earlier this month in Oman. Iran's deputy foreign minister told the BBC yesterday Iran is ready to consider compromises to reach an agreement if the U.S. is willing to discuss lifting sanctions. The UN says despite the U.S. brokered ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, it's still waiting for an agreement to be reached to disarm Hamas before it can begin removing explosives from civilian areas. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports.
The United Nations Mine Action Service is currently clearing explosive ordnance for humanitarian aid workers, but it's not yet systematically removing explosive remnants from civilian areas, so they're not accused of taking weapons away from Hamas before an agreement is reached on disarmament. The U.S. is working on a plan for disarming Hamas. A question remains if Hamas would retain small arms for some time. In new remarks, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Hamas would need to give up its assault rifles and said 70% of Hamas's tunnels in Gaza are still intact. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
This is NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Auto Insurance protects the vehicles that work to keep small businesses moving forward, including protection while running errands and other tasks. At progressivecommercial.com.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7. I'm Craig Kopp. At Seabreeze Park in Tallahassee this weekend, protesters held signs saying, "Kayaks, not cruise ships," and "Healthy Bay equals healthy economy." Hundreds rallied against a cruise terminal proposed off the Sunshine Skyway in Manatee County. Resident Ashley Bowling was one of the organizers.
There's not many places like this in Florida left, and they are disappearing quickly. I hope people walk away from this more informed.
Speakers included a commercial fisherman, a charter boat captain, and former state biologist Tom Glancy.
I figured out they would have to dredge a channel approximately 4.5 miles long, about 1,000 feet wide, and up to 60 feet deep from their property all the way out to the existing shipping channel.
The group People Protecting Tallahassee Aquatic Preserve recruited volunteers and collected petition signatures at the event. With just weeks left until Major League Baseball season begins, repairs are winding down at Tropicana Field. Millions of dollars in damage was done to the indoor stadium after Hurricane Milton ripped its roof off in 2024. Beth Herendine is with the city of St. Petersburg. She says fans are in for a treat.
For fans coming in, it will be, nostalgically familiar. It won't look tremendously different. It'll be nice and fresh and clean, and they won't really see any remnants of the hurricane or anything like that.
If you want to see the latest photos from inside the Trop, visit WUSF.org. If you're going to use northbound I-75 in Sarasota County tonight, there's going to be some construction worth watching out for. The Florida Department of Transportation says the two right lanes will be closed at 9 p.m. in various sections between Kings Highway and River Road. They're expected to reopen by 5 a.m. Time permitting, some lanes of southbound I-75 between River Road and Sumter Boulevard may also be temporarily closed overnight. I'm Craig Kopp, WUSF 89.7 News.
I'm Daylina Miller, multimedia journalist at WUSF. See photo galleries, videos, and so much more on WUSF.org, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Catch me in your community. And say cheese.
Caring Collective's Caring in Action Collaboration Celebration supports the mission and impact of 17 nonprofits on the Glasser Schoenbaum campus of Caring. You can make a difference on March 5th. Information at caring-collective.org.
This is Florida Matters, live and local, sponsored by Badawi Law, and we're broadcasting from the Doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studio at WSF in Tampa. I'm Matthew Petty. In Tallahassee, lawmakers are conjuring up ways to reduce property taxes or eliminate them. A new report from the Florida Policy Institute analyzes proposed legislation, and FPI says altogether Florida counties could lose billions of dollars annually. Now, leaders in Tampa Bay counties like Pasco, Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Manatee are counting how much revenue they could lose and calculating ways to make up for the loss while still serving residents. Now, would you be in favor of a property tax reduction, and why? Or maybe you're concerned about how cutting taxes will affect your community. You can tell us about it by calling 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. Send us an email. We're at FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Well, joining us now to talk about property taxes and what's at stake for Tampa Bay counties are Mike Fasano, Pasco County Tax Collector. Mike, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, sir.
And also joining us is Cregan Mostella, the Director of External Affairs for Florida Association of Counties. Cregan, thank you.
Thank you.
So there are some resolutions making their way through the legislature, and they range from a gradual reduction over 10 years to an immediate repeal of property taxes, and each measure prohibits counties from reducing law enforcement budgets, so there's some ring fencing around at least part of what counties can spend their money on. And these are just a couple of examples of what could be ballot questions put to Florida voters later this year. Mike, as a tax collector and as a former Republican lawmaker who served in both the House and the Senate, do your ears perk up when conversations are happening around property taxes, or do you kind of think, oh no, here we go again?
No, they do. In fact, recently even more, our ears are perking up when you see the movement in the Florida House of the three bills that you just briefly spoke about. That would be a huge impact if you did away with property taxes overnight. It'd be a huge impact to not only counties and cities, but to our office, the tax collector's office. Perfect example, we see between 50 and 60,000 people a month. 95% of the people that will come into our 5 offices here in Pasco, they do motor vehicle services, renewing registrations, getting a driver's license, transferring a title. Every tax collector in the state of Florida loses money on motor vehicle services. On a registration renewal, we get $3. The rest of it goes to Tallahassee. On a driver's license, we get $6.25. The rest goes to Tallahassee. We lose money on motor vehicles, and we get no money from anywhere other than the customers that we provide a service to. If property taxes were to go away, that means the commission that our tax collector offices get by collecting those property taxes would go away. But how are we going to provide the 95% of the people that we serve each and every day in our offices for motor vehicle services? Someone's going to have to fill that void. There's no more DMVs in the state of Florida. Every tax collector is obligated and is but required by law to provide these services. There would be no money to provide to us to continue to provide to those services that people come to our offices each day.
So would it be, could you see a fee attached or more of a fee attached perhaps to somebody, doing some of those motor vehicle related tasks that they have to?
Well, I don't think it's fair to the customer to attach an additional fee. What's the purpose of doing away with property taxes if you're going to tax the person who does a driver's license or a registration renewal? Every dollar that we get for those small amounts I just described goes to Tallahassee into a trust fund, the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle Trust Fund. What they would do with those dollars are up to the legislature. But it's important for the legislature to know the impact it's going to have on their constituents back home. And that's why, look, we're all for reducing property taxes, but don't talk about doing away with them. The impact. Do you know that 50% of every county budget, well, let me put it this way, 50% of the Pasco County government budget goes to law enforcement and fire services.
Right.
I mean, you start doing away with those, what are you going to do when you call 911?
Right, but those laws we mentioned, they are kind of like saying you can't touch, you still have to pay for fire and so forth.
So then you're not doing away with property taxes, but you also have 2 types of property taxes. When you get your tax bill, you have ad valorem assessments and you have non-ad valorem assessments. So the non-ad valorem are not going away. They don't discuss that. And as far as ad valorem, you have bond issues on that tax bill that those bonds have to be paid off. What's going to happen to those bonds if you do away with property taxes? Who's going to pay those bonds off that were issued for the purpose of building parks, maybe fire stations, things like that throughout the state of Florida in each individual county? There's so much to understand the impact that will have on our counties if you did away with property taxes completely.
Mike, you've obviously been thinking quite deeply about this, and you definitely have some thoughts to share. Now, if you have thoughts about the potential doing away with or reduction of property taxes, want to hear from you as well. The number is 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. 6560. You can also send us an email. Let us know your thoughts there. FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. With us, Mike Fasano, who's the Pasco County Tax Collector, also joined by Cregan Mostella, Director of External Affairs for the Florida Association of Counties, I should say. Now, Cregan, there's a bunch of counties that are going to be affected by this, and the Florida Association of Counties has its own data, an interactive map kind of reflecting how different counties shape up. So can you sort of talk about what you've seen and what your analysis shows about which counties are going to be losing out and how and why?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to just echo what the senator said, which is everybody wants property taxes to be lower. Everybody wants our taxes to be lower. I would love my taxes to be lower. But with those taxes come benefits. And if you have to hold law enforcement harmless, then you only have a little bit of money left, if any money left in some counties, to make sure that drinking water is clean, to take care of roads and bridges, to take care of your other constitutional officers, emergency response. There's a lot of really and critical things and benefits that people receive from their county government. We have the luxury of taking smooth roads for granted, but those come at a cost. Our clean drinking water, good stormwater drainage. We all know what a good storm can do to our roads. All of those things come with heavy infrastructure costs associated with it. And I think it's important to realize that every county in the state is different. How this will impact them is very different. And one of the great things about Florida's sunshine laws is all of your county budgets are available online. They're fully accessible. So if you have any concerns about how your county is spending money, take a look. They're out there for you to be able to look at, and all of those decisions are made from the dais and in the sunshine. So you have a great opportunity to go to your county commission and express your concerns.
Yep.
And so we hope that folks will take that advantage.
Well, this isn't the only time we've talked about property taxes on Florida Matters Live and Local. Last month, Manatee County Commissioner George Cruz joined us, and he said he'd love to lower or eliminate property taxes, but none of the proposed measures address the challenges his constituents are facing.
Nobody has proposed, nor do I have the ability to backstop the services people want. I just had a bunch of emails from a swim team because we had to close one of our pools down 2 days a week because we can't fit hiring enough lifeguards into our current budget. And so we're getting screamed at. I'd love to open that pool.
And then we also heard from Palm Bay Republican Representative Monique Miller. She's the sponsor for a couple of property tax measures. And she says this drive to reduce taxes came from voters.
People were asking us for a property tax relief. The Florida families have been having to tighten their belts, and unfortunately, government spending has increased substantially, and it's really gotten to a point where there was a lot of backlash, and public opinion was we really want to get rid of property taxes.
Well, if you're one of those voters who asked your lawmakers for property tax relief, love to hear from you. Join the conversation. You can give us a call at 813-755-6562 or email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Or maybe you feel like there needs to be a more robust discussion about taxes before the decision is left up to voters with a ballot amendment. 813-755-6562. Mike, what would you say to folks who find themselves in a position where their property taxes are more than they can handle right now and they say they need relief?
And I understand completely. We hear from those same people each and every day, whether it be our seniors, low-income people, and we try to help them in finding ways to help them paying those property taxes. I mean, if we're going to look at something, and I hope they do, increase the homestead exemption. That has helped people significantly. People who are actually living in their homes, those are the people that we should look at in assisting. And I think the best way to do that is increase the homestead exemption. That would help people significantly and still have enough dollars going to our counties and cities to fund the needs of the people in their communities. But doing away with property taxes, again, it's not only the tax collector's office you're going to have effect on, because we are now the DMV. The clerk of the court is funded by property taxes. The supervisor of elections that provides elections every 2 years in this state, they're totally funded by property taxes. How will they be able to run their offices?
Yeah, a lot of questions there. I got an email here I want to read. In this email from Tom Thione, I am particularly against the reduction and or removal of property taxes. It seems to be a matter of responsibility. The residents of Florida should be paying for the services they use and enjoy. To quote Tom Waits, everybody has to add beans to the pot. I wonder if we remove our requirements to help fund our civic resources, are we willing to proportionately give up our voice to how those services are provided and maintained? We've got about a few seconds here before we go to break, but I'd just like to get your thoughts on that, and stay with us if you could, Craig and Mike. But Craig, what about that? Are we giving up something if we're going to kind of give up some of these tax revenues?
I don't think there's any question that Tom is right there with his email. The fact of the matter is taxes do pay for services. A lot of services are necessary, like roads and stormwater and drinking water and emergency management. But a lot of other services that counties provide are the reasons why we move to the communities we choose, because they have great parks, because they have great swimming pools, because they have wonderful resources. So all of those things make our communities great, and they're paid for with taxes.
All right, stay with us if you could for a moment or two more. We're talking with Craig and Mosteller with the Florida Association of Counties and Pasco County Tax Collector Mike Fasano. We've got some calls coming in. If you're on the phone, stay on the phone. The number 813-755-6562. We'll continue the conversation on Florida Matters Live and Local in just a moment.
The Winter Olympics in Milan have begun, and our partners at NPR are there. Keep listening to WUSF to hear great stories and to keep track of the medal count. Plus, you can get that content online too at WUSF.org and on the WUSF app.
The Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg is proud to present the electrifying art of the Baroque master Caravaggio. Experience the drama and intensity of Caravaggio's world with over 40 stunning canvases. More at mfastpete.org.
2026 is a year to stand for facts. Your $20 monthly gift supports independent journalism at a time when misinformation elsewhere grows louder every day. WUSF is powered by people who choose truth. One person, one gift, 1 month at a time. Join the movement at WUSF.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. We're talking about the quest to reduce or remove property taxes with this Pasco County Tax Collector Mike Fasano and Craig Mosteller with the Florida Association of Counties. A few proposals floating around the legislature right now. One of those could go to Florida voters in the form of a ballot initiative, a ballot amendment, I should say a constitutional amendment, but that's yet to be determined. But if you've got thoughts about it, give us a call, 813-755-6562, or send us an email, floridaMatters@WUSF.org. Let's go to Joe. Joe calling in. What are you thinking?
Well, I think that this is a perfect example of Republicans shifting the tax burden from the rich to the middle class and poor. The taxes will come from other services. You know, I'm all for reducing waste in government, but you don't start with a reduction in taxes. You start with a reduction in waste, and then you can reduce the taxes. But, you know, sadly, people who are paying $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 in property taxes will be voting yes to reduce it, and they don't realize that they're going to see cuts in services, or they'll also see taxes go up in other areas.
Right.
And,
yeah,
that's my opinion.
Joe, thank you for your call. I appreciate that. So, Craig, and what about that? I mean, is this going to shift the burden onto some groups more than others?
I think that's exactly right. When you eliminate homestead property taxes, which is the governor's proposal, that means that those those funding is going to end up coming from somewhere else, or cuts to services. And that means apartment renters, they're likely to see higher taxes or higher rent to pay for those taxes, or you're going to see a shift in sales tax or something like that. The Tax Foundation, which is a conservative organization, made the proposal that it could be as much as a 15% sales tax if you eliminated homestead property taxes in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
So there definitely will be a reverberating impact.
Indeed. Well, let's go to Anne. Anne is calling in as well. What are you thinking, Anne?
Well, I'm really concerned about, in Hillsborough County, for instance, we have a bond initiative.
Sorry, which county is this, Anne? May I ask?
Hillsborough County's
Gotcha.
bond initiative to purchase the environmental lands that we have purchased. This was voted for the taxpayers 3 different times with overwhelming support. And if we don't have the property taxes to pay for this, how will we be able to continue to purchase the last of the environmental lands in our highly developing county?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, let me put that to you, Mike. What about that sort of bond? I think you were talking about the need to pay back bonds.
Yeah. Well, it won't happen. Bottom line is those bonds won't get paid because those are ad valorem assessments. Those are taxes. And if there's no money to pay those bonds, then there's no money to buy land. There's no money to build fire stations here in Pasco. There's no money to be able to renovate our parks here in Pasco County. So it's no different in Hillsborough County. And if I may go back to Joe, who referred to Republicans. I'm a Republican, by the way. And so I'm not one of those who want to do some of the crazy things that a few want to do in Tallahassee. Thankfully, there's some common sense going on in Tallahassee that says, hey, we realize that we want to reduce property taxes, but not to the extent that some want to do. I really believe that if legislators truly understood the impact, the true impact, when I talk to a legislator and tell him or her the impact it's going to have on us as a tax collector office, that I will no longer be able to serve their constituents, truly no longer be able to serve them, they think twice about that.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of people calling in. So clearly, folks, we know that we've talked about this before and people are quite fired up about it, but let's go back to the phones again. I believe we've got Jim calling in. Jim, what are you thinking?
I was curious. It seems as though the defense against reducing property taxes has always been that the first thing that's going to go is public services. And yet, on the other side, the instant we talk about building a brand new baseball stadium or otherwise for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, the revenue seems to be available. Can you explain how that works?
Okay, that's a good sum to dig into there. What about that, Mike? What about Jim's question there about where the money comes from for these things?
I live in Pasco. We're not building any $100, $200, $300 million stadium. You'd have to go and ask your local leaders about that. I'm not sure either. I'm not a big fan of using local money to build stadiums for sports franchises that make millions and millions and millions of dollars down the road. So if I was one who had the opportunity to vote, I would not support that. So he would need to go speak to his local city council members or county commissioners there where they're building this.
Okay, let's go to Santana now. Santana calling in from Pinellas, I believe.
Yes, I'm Eliseo Santana. I'm calling from Pinellas. I've been a resident of Pinellas County since 1980 when I finished my service in the military and came here with my wife. I've been retired for 12 years, so I'm on a fixed income. I'm a senior citizen. I own my own home. I am extremely happy with the level of services that I'm receiving from my property tax, how it's being done. I think there could be some fine tweaking here and there, but generally I'm happy. I don't really have I don't have really property taxes, not necessarily an area that I would like to have my money go into to be able to supply and provide these services, but I want these services.
Yeah.
And so the legislators have not given me a some kind of a path, some kind of a discussion, a way of how can we substitute the money coming out of property tax to cover these expenses in a way that I am happy with, that is robust, that will occur. And that's not happening, and so hence I am against doing that.
All right, Alicia, thank you so much for weighing in there. Craig, and what about that? I mean, that sort of speaks to that kind of where does the money come from if not property taxes?
I mean, it sounds like your callers have a really good understanding of the impacts. I couldn't agree more with what he has to say. I think that's exactly right. Property taxes do pay for services, and some of those services are necessary and mandated by the state legislature that we have to fulfill. And so when you don't have the funding to do that, that means a tax shift, and that means somebody else will have to pay. And so, no, I think he's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. One more call, if we could, Chuck. You've got a minute. Well, actually, less than a minute. But if you can get your point made in a second or two, let us know. Oh, Chuck, we lost Chuck. Oh, sorry. Let's go to Bill instead.
Hey.
Hey there.
How you doing today?
Good. You're on the air. What do you think?
All right. I think that we should leave it as it is, because I'll tell you what, the minute you start passing your money out to somebody else, they don't handle it as well as you do. Now, This tax thing, if you look at your tax bill, I'm going to give you just one quick issue. Every time I read my tax bill that comes in, a little trim notice, I notice that the state always gets more money for schools than the county. All right? Now, and yet it's the county that turns around and asks everybody to raise the taxes so that they can give the teachers money and increase the education benefits and all that. And I think if we keep it locally, if they turn it around, it'd be great, because then the state would be getting the lesser money and the county would be getting the more money, and we wouldn't have to go to this
Bill, I'm going to have to let the call go, but I really appreciate you weighing in. Keep it local. We are hearing that from some other folks too. But Bill, thank you for calling in. Everybody who called in, appreciate you weighing in. Thanks also to our guests, Pasco County Tax Collector Mike Fasano and Cregan Mosteller with the Florida Association of Counties. Much more to talk about on this, and we'll keep tabs on this property tax debate as it unfolds. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Coming up next on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking about Florida's gun laws and what could be done to make them safer. Stay tuned.
When you listen to WUSF, you hear how immigration policies impact your neighbors, like a Sarasota woman who chose to return to Mexico rather than fight her deportation case.
They knew I was free, they knew I was happy, and they made it possible.
WUSF helps you understand national news by bringing you a local perspective.
Support for WUSF comes from listeners like you and from Badawi Law, offering legal services in personal injury, immigration, and auto accidents, with offices in Tampa, Florida. Office information and practice details at badawilaw.com, or learn more on Instagram at Badawi Law. Sarasota Ballet presents the Visiting Martha Graham Dance Company, and the program provides a connection with the company's 100th anniversary, February 27th through March 2nd at the FSU Center. Tickets at sarasotaballet.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, the U.S. is the leading nation in mass shootings. From 2000 to 2022, the U.S. accounted for 76% of mass shootings in highly industrialized countries. That's according to the Rockefeller Institute of Government. On February 10th, last week, in fact, a shooting in Sarasota left 5 people dead and members of the community there shocked and confused. Here's an update from Tampa Bay 28 last week.
Call came in around 12:30 Tuesday afternoon. The Sarasota County Sheriff's Office said deputies found a male victim in the front yard. The victim later died. SCSO said deputies went into the house where they found 4 more deceased victims.
And that shooting has now been linked to a double homicide in Fort Lauderdale. Well, the Giffords Law Center is a non-profit which advocates for tougher gun laws. The center's policy directors have created a scale to judge how secure or strict each state's gun laws are. And here to explain how Florida's gun laws measure up is Spencer Myers. He's a state and local policy attorney at Giffords Law, and Lindsay Nichols, the policy director at Giffords Law Center. Lindsay and Spencer, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we want to hear from you as well. Did the Sarasota shooting make you reflect on gun violence prevention and Florida's gun laws? Is there a law change that you think could make a difference to gun safety in Florida? You can join the conversation by giving us a call at 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email floridamatters@wusf.org. Okay, so Lindsay, Florida has a C on the scale from your organization, but other states got an F. So what is Florida doing differently?
Sure. So as you are alluding to, different states have drastically different gun laws and drastically different gun death rates. Some states have many strong gun laws that are lacking in other states. And so every year we publish a scorecard and we analyze every gun law in every state. And we assign points, a point value to each policy based on how effective we know it is at reducing gun violence. And we tally up those points and give each state a score. But Florida gets a C minus, as you suggest. It's about average among the states in terms of the gun laws, and that means that there's much more that the state can do. After the Parkland shooting in 2018, the state enacted some gun laws, a waiting period, a red flag law, a bump stock ban that raised that state's grade from an F to a C minus. And Spencer can tell you even more in detail about the state's gun laws, but there's a lot more things they can do. Florida doesn't, for example, require a background check before the purchase of a firearm in some instances. So there's many strong gun laws that other states do have that Florida does not have.
Does it take some time before you can see the impact of a law, or whether it's been enforced effectively, or whether it is actually having a measurable effect on gun violence or gun deaths in a state?
It certainly can take some time, depending on how diligently the state policymakers work to implement the law. One of the kinds of policies where we see a very dramatic impact very quickly involves funding for community violence intervention programs, and that's something that Florida has just recently began to invest in. Those are programs that where members of the community who often have experience with gun violence themselves make it their profession to interrupt cycles of violence, working with those who are at the highest risk of gun violence and involvement in gun violence. They often do their work in hospitals as well as on the streets, working with people who have been shot to make sure that a retaliatory cycle of violence doesn't result. When we invest in those kinds of programs, we often see a reduction within the next year or two in gun violence in those communities. So there are some kinds of policies that we know have a quick effect. There are other kinds of policies that can take years to actually have effect because they can, for example, prohibit the sale of the most dangerous guns. Well, there may already be so many guns out there already available to members of the public that it will take, a generation before we may see those laws have an effect.
Yeah, Spencer, let me get your take on this, and let me just reintroduce you. Lindsay Nichols, Policy Director at the Giffords Law Centre, also talking with Spencer Myers, who is a state and local policy attorney at Giffords Law, talking about Giffords Law Centre's rating for Florida and other states in terms of their gun violence prevention laws. Florida gets a C minus. Spencer, what's your take when you look at this kind of C minus rating? What is Florida doing well? What could it improve in?
Sure. Well, as Lindsay alluded to, following the tragic shooting at Parkland, Florida took some meaningful steps to enact life-saving policies that really have made a difference in Florida. Florida's red flag law, the raising of the minimum age to purchase a firearm from 18 to 21, the implementation of a waiting period for most firearm sales. These are all things that are proven to save lives. We've seen it in other states across the country, and we've seen it here in Florida. The red flag law in particular has been tied to a significant decrease in the firearm homicide rate after its implementation. At the same time, a C minus grade, of course, implies that there's more to do. And there are some basic fundamental things that Florida lawmakers can still enact to further protect Florida citizens. And that includes universal background checks. It includes going from this initial funding that's been provided for CVI to setting up a steady funding stream year after year. And it includes things like ensuring that firearms are securely stored when they're not being carried or used, and implementing requirements on that front and making sure the public is aware of best practices for the safe storage of firearms.
Indeed. Well, I want to get into that notion of background checks, and I believe we've got a caller on the line who's got a point to make about that. Joshua is calling in. Joshua, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Sarasota.
And what are you thinking as you're hearing this conversation?
So I was just chiming in because a lot of myself and a lot of gentlemen I hang out with purchase firearms and have firearms, and the fact that background checks aren't being done, I don't know if that's true or not, because a lot of us have to go through background checks to get our firearms, and also have to wait that 3-day waiting period. My whole big thing is I would like to see more of is a lot of people being educated on firearms and know their laws on what firearms are for, and also mental health, because our country has gone away from mental health a long time ago, and it's people that harm people, whether they use a baseball bat or whatever weapon they choose. In the end, it's the mental of the people that I'm more concerned with, because my house, I feel like, has never been safer for myself and my children, with that protection in our house, whether it be someone trying to rob our house or break in to cause harm. So I think it's what it comes down to is the mental of the people.
Yeah.
Again, because
can I ask you real quick, Joshua, when you what was the process of getting the background check like? Like how extensive is that?
That every firearm store you may go purchase a firearm from in the counties that I'm in require a background check, and you have to pay for that background check with the purchase of your firearm. So how extensive is it? I don't know, because I don't know their programs they're using.
Okay.
But I know that you have to go through a background check and a 3-day waiting period in order to receive your firearm.
Joshua, thank you so much for calling in. Really appreciate that. And if you have some questions or thoughts about this issue, gun violence prevention, gun safety in Florida, give us a call, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Talking about Florida's gun laws and how they measure up to other states with Spencer Myers. He is a state and local policy attorney at Giffords Law, and Lindsay Nichols, policy director at Giffords Law Centre. Well, back to you, Spencer. So what about that notion? I mean, when you talk about universal background checks, is it something different from what's already happening in Florida?
It is, and what your callers alluded to is the process that does occur for transfers that go through a federally licensed firearm dealer. And there's a form that's filled out, a check that's run, and that typically can be processed and completed near instantaneously through the federal system in place. Universal background checks ensure that those checks, which make sure that the person buying a gun is legally able to possess it, make sure they're not a felon or some other prohibited person who is not supposed to have a firearm. That process isn't being used for transactions like those at gun shows or through other private transactions. And what universal background check laws do is simply ensure that that existing process does in fact apply to all firearm sales, so that people who can't have firearms are not circumventing the law in order to get their hands on them anyways.
Yeah, and I wanted to pivot to you for a moment, Lindsay Nichols. So when our caller is talking about the need for more kind of mental health intervention or more of a focus on that, like what does your centre do to sort of talk about those issues as well?
Yeah, this is another issue where state laws vary dramatically, and Florida has made some progress, certainly by enacting the red flag law after the Parkland shooting. So what that does is it allows a law enforcement officer who is aware that somebody is acting in a manner that clearly shows that they're dangerous and shouldn't have a gun to get a court order, present that evidence to a judge who can issue an order that temporarily removes that person's access to firearms. Some other states have gone a step further and allow family members to seek those court orders. So that's something that enables a person who's concerned about their family member. Maybe they think their family member is suicidal or has threatened a mass shooting. Then that family member can seek the same kind of court order, again, after presenting evidence to a judge, and have that person's guns removed temporarily. So that's another important step that Florida should consider taking. There is certainly mental health funding directly for services is extremely important. It's most important, I would say, for people who have experienced gun violence in their community and other tragedies. Those kinds of situations when a child grows up in a community where gun violence is prevalent, that can lead to those sorts of cycles of violence that are that I was talking about before. And mental health services can break that cycle, and that's part of those community violence intervention programs we've been talking about.
And Spencer, you mentioned CVI, right, which I understand is community violence intervention programs. Could you just talk a little bit more about what those are and sort of how those fit into this conversation?
Sure. So community violence intervention really spans a wide range of programs that's meant to interrupt cycles of violence or prevent violence before it can occur. And it can involve working with individuals who have been victims of gun violence or their loved ones to make sure that they have the care and support services that they need to recover, to prevent retaliatory actions. It includes things like mentorship or career training with at-risk individuals. It really spans a wide range of potential policies and tends to target communities that are most at risk or experiencing the highest rates of gun violence.
Yeah.
And it's been found to be very, very effective at preventing that violence.
Just before we let you both go, I wanted to just ask you real quick, Lindsay, if I could, how often do states get regraded? Is it every year, or is it just every time there's a new policy change or law change?
Yeah, we do this process every year, and we basically start from scratch working through every state gun law, but we do take into account the changes that are made. So that includes both policy changes that strengthen the law and make gun laws stronger, as well as policies that weaken the law. Florida did one of those, for example, in 2023, when it started to allow permitless carry, the carry of concealed handguns in public without a permit. That lowered Florida's score.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave that conversation there, but thank you so much to Spencer Myers, State and Local Policy Attorney at Giffords Law, and Lindsay Nichols, Policy Director at Giffords Law Centre. Really appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
So much.
Well, coming up next, some counties in Florida are in a severe drought. More on that in a moment on Florida Matters Live and Local.
I'm Tiziana Deering. On President's Day, we look at how leaders past and present have blurred the lines between celebrity and politician, including President Obama, who took to late-night TV to sell his message.
Jimmy, POTUS stands for President of the United States.
He's the POTUS with the most
The impact, next time on Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
At WUSF, support comes from the people who listen, like you. Also, Seitenbacher, with a new web shop. Healthy muesli, cold-pressed oils, and vegetable broth mix delivered to your door from right here in Tampa Bay. Details at Seitenbacher.com. Seitenbacher. Seitenbacher. Strass Center's Opera Tampa presents Mozart's The Magic Flute, featuring live musical performance by the Florida Orchestra. This new production includes never-before-seen sets and costumes in Ferguson Hall. Tickets available at strasscenter.org.
I'm Ricardo Cuomo, and I'm a WUSF Zimmerman School Radio News intern. At WUSF, I found an incredible group of people who supported me and taught me a lot throughout my time here. Everything I know about the radio industry, I owe it to them, and all the amazing opportunities I've had as an intern. With your help, future journalists like me can get the opportunities we need to grow in our careers.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Before a downfall last night in Tampa, it hadn't really rained in the city since December, and although it's not rainy season just yet, the state has been in a severe drought. Last time Hillsborough County got more than 2 inches of rain was last September. And according to local meteorologists, this is the driest Tampa has been since 1890. The drought has caused water restrictions, burn bans, even wildfires across the Tampa Bay region. Fire crews in Waimauma are still battling a brush fire that spread to over 350 acres. They said it was the 14th fire call of the day. As of 10 p.m. last night, the fire was only partially contained. And Sarasota County Fire Chief David Rathbun on Friday urged people to observe the burn ban and to have a plan in place in case they need to evacuate their homes before because of wildfire. Here he is speaking at a press conference last Friday.
It seems like the weather pattern is aligning to be in line with the 2011 and the 1998 wildfire seasons in the state of Florida, where essentially all of Florida was on fire.
We're joining us to talk more about the severe weather conditions and the drought in many Florida counties. Kyle Hansen with Spectrum Bay News 9. He's a meteorologist there. Kyle, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Also joined by Jeremy Odell, the Hernando County Deputy Emergency Management Director. Jeremy, thank you as well.
Glad to be here.
So, Kyle, let me start with you. What's going on? I mean, obviously, we're not in rainy season just yet, but we should still be getting some rain, right? So what is happening?
Well, of course, Matthew, since last September, we have been in our driest period in history, like you mentioned a little bit earlier. So since September 1st through the middle of February, we have only seen in some cities on the west coast of Florida only around 4 to 6 inches of rain, which is generally for that period about 8 to 12 inches or more below average, which is the driest. There are several, at least 5 cities on the west coast that are the driest they've been for that period since records began back in the 1800s.
Wow.
So that's it's a pretty rough situation. If we had a normal month in September, we probably wouldn't be in the situation that we're at right now. Basically, what happened is the rainy season shut off 1 month early. And that is why we're in the situation that we're in right now.
Wow. And so, based on the National Weather Service's drought monitoring map of Florida, Tampa is between severe and extreme drought. What does that actually mean?
Well, it's exactly as it sounds. So the extreme drought is one step below the worst case, which is exceptional drought. And so severe drought generally means you're starting to get significant impacts when it comes to reservoirs, vegetation really drying out, and watering restrictions are basically going to become necessary when you start to get into severe drought. Moderate's kind of the step below, where you start to monitor the possibility for things like that. And that's what we are seeing right now in the Orlando area. They have been lucky, and they have been seeing a little bit more rainfall than the rest of the state. But they may soon also be moving more towards severe drought as well.
We're talking with Kyle Hansen. He's with Spectrum Bay News 9. He's a meteorologist there, talking about the drought conditions in the Tampa Bay region. Also with us is Jeremy Odell, the Hernando County Deputy Emergency Management Director. And if you've got questions or some observations about the drought we're seeing, maybe got questions about what's happening in your neck of the woods, if you're worried about fire danger, give us a call, 813-755-6562. You can also reach out to us on email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org, or drop us a note in our YouTube live stream. So, Jeremy, tell us about what's happening in Hernando County. WTSP said that county crews had to put out 45 brush fires in a month, I believe. So that sounds like an awful lot. How bad is this year's fire season?
Yeah, it is bad, and as Kyle had said, we're seeing conditions that rival that historic '98 season, where we saw significant fires all across the state of Florida. Actually, updated numbers from the beginning of our burn ban in Hernando County, which started on January 8th, we're actually up to 59 brush fires in this county, and our crews, along with the Florida Forestry Service, we expect those numbers to continue to go up as even with a little bit of rainfall that we had yesterday and last night, we will continue to see fires with the burn ban in effect. The best thing that people can do is just to be cognizant of that, be cognizant of the burn ban, and do their best to avoid any potential fuels around their property or anything that could contribute to these conditions.
I was driving back from Jacksonville yesterday afternoon, passing Daytona, and there was a big plume of smoke as I drove past Daytona. This was on 95. As I got a little bit closer past a campground, it looked like there was a car on fire, and I could see fire engines rushing towards it. And then a few hours later, I was checking the news, and I saw that the fire had actually burned a bunch of cars, caused a lot of brush fires as well, and it shut down 95 in both directions for a couple of hours. So just kind of an indication of how bad and how scary things can get. Like, what are you seeing in terms of these brush fires, and what can you tell people about how to stay safe with them? Because they do seem pretty terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. And something as simple as even a toss lit cigarette right now can contribute to a significant brush fire. And so, right now messaging is key. Here in Hernando County, we're working with our, partners within fire rescue, Florida Forestry, along coordination with our partners at NWS, making sure that the messaging gets out, one, for the burn ban, but two, to ensure that, residents are both cognizant of their own defensible spaces around their property, as well as any potential violations of that burn ban. If they could please report anyone that is illegally at this point burning, they can call our communication center at 352-754-6830. Or if anyone sees smoke or fire, as you had said, kind of driving around and responders are not there, right now, quickly reaching out to first responders to get to the scene is imperative, as there is such dry conditions that the sooner that crews can arrive, the better the situation. So really just ensuring that if you see any of these issues, to report them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, if I could come back to you for a moment, Kyle. So in terms of like the counties you cover as a meteorologist, what are you seeing in some of those counties like Sarasota and Polk County as well? Is it kind of uniformly dry? Because when I look at a drought map, it looks pretty red in a lot of those Tampa Bay area counties.
Yeah, fairly dry in most of the counties. I'd say Citrus County and North is generally in a bad situation with the rain. Then also from about southern Tampa Bay, farther south. I actually got some official numbers up here, and at the Tampa National Weather Service office, they have only received. Well, this was for earlier in the month, so maybe yesterday the numbers might be a little bit higher by a half inch or so. But
Sure.
from September 1st through the beginning of February, they only received 3.4 inches of rain. And Sarasota was right around 6.2 inches. And then Brooksville, Hernando County, received just over 5 inches of rain. Most of those sites, that's the driest since that period. And also another thing that I'd like to add that's contributing to the fire danger is the fact that we had one of the coldest temperatures that we have seen since back in 2010. So earlier this month, we had temperatures below freezing farther south than they have been in many years. And so now we have not only very dry weather, but we have a bunch of dead vegetation that we normally don't get after a typical winter. You have people that have planted plants that belong in more tropical climates that aren't native, and now those plants are dead. Our native grasses too have also have died in some areas, and that could create some problems with dead grass, dry grass, and you can get grass fires as well.
Yeah. And Jeremy mentioned the rainfall we had sort of last night into this morning. Has that made any kind of an impact at all, Kyle?
I think maybe in Hernando and Citrus County there may be a brief reprieve, because we did see about 1 to 3 inches of rain in some areas. So I think maybe in a few spots we might have, at least in the short term, a reduced fire danger compared to, say, yesterday. But it probably will not take long. And the deficits that we are running are much higher than 1 to 3 inches. We're running generally about 8 to 14 inches behind over the last several months. So we're going to need probably another 5 to 7 events like we had last night to make even a dent in this.
Yeah, Jeremy, this may be a silly question, but what exactly is a brush fire? Like, how does it differentiate from any other kind of fire that your emergency crews would be responding to?
Well, typically what we'll see with fire rescue in Hernando County is you'll see these structure fires, be it residential, commercial, things like that. But when we look at a brush fire, we look at those open, a lot of times unimproved, which will not have a structure on them. Areas where, even as Kyle had mentioned, these potential fuels, you have debris, grass, vegetative areas, and as Kyle had mentioned, this hard freeze that we've had and lack of moisture, a lot of our vegetation that we have in these open areas, either wooded or fields, they're very, very dry. So these brush fires are exactly that. They are fires that catch the brush and contribute, and they will, with these heavy dry conditions, they will move very quickly and they will burn very hot.
In the last sort of minute or so we have here, what can people do to kind of keep themselves and their property safe, I guess, Jeremy?
Absolutely. So I mentioned before, defensible space, ensuring that some of these fire fuels, any type of down trees or dead grass, shrubs, things like that that are around your property. If you can create a space for about 30 feet, depending on the size of your property, around your structure, removing any type of dead debris pile that could contribute to that, and also just public awareness, preparedness. You can follow Hernando County Fire Rescue, Hernando County Emergency Management on all of our social media, and you can utilize alert notification system like what we have here in Hernando County, which is Alert Hernando. You can sign up for that at www.alerthernando.org, and we will send out mass notification if you have signed up for that of any potential fire risk in your area.
We're going to have to leave the conversation there, but Jeremy Odell, Hernando County Deputy Emergency Management Director, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
And also speaking with us, Carl Hansen, Spectrum Bay News 9 meteorologist. Carl, thank you too.
My pleasure.
Well, that's our show for today. Coming up tomorrow, have you ever posted something snarky on social media and then regretted it? We'll talk about why it's important to think before you post, and we'll chat with the FBI about how they assess online threats. And if you've got questions, you can call in 813-755-6562, leave a message, join the conversation at noon. Florida Matters executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Our producers are Quincy Walters and Emily Horace. Our engineers are Jackson Harp and Gio Garvin. And Jackson composed the music, and Warren Buckholtz handled the video today. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcast, watch on WUSF's YouTube channel. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks for being with us.
Cameroonian author Patrice Ganang was exiled from his home country for criticizing its longtime ruler, Paul Biya. I speak with Ganang about growing up in Cameroon and how the president has stayed in power for so long. That's next time on The World.
You can hear The World at 3 o'clock after Here and Now, which is next. You're listening to WUSF 89.7 Tampa, winner of the 2025